Have you ever found yourself staring blankly at a page, and then you realize your mind is like a million miles away? Or maybe you felt that jolt of being totally immersed in something where time just seems to vanish. Well, today we're diving deep into the fascinating world of consciousness. We're going to explore all those different states our minds jump between, from laser focus to the mysteries of sleep and dreams, and even how we sometimes intentionally, or maybe unintentionally, alter these states. This whole deep dive is based on some really comprehensive excerpts from Essentials of Psychology, Concepts and Applications. Our mission here is pretty simple. Unpack the key ideas, maybe reveal some surprising facts about how our brains actually work, and just give you a shortcut to understanding the fabric of your own daily awareness. Get ready for some hopefully major aha moments about your inner workings. Okay, so let's kick things off. Our consciousness isn't static, right? It's always moving, almost like a spotlight. Think of it as selective. We're constantly directing our attention, filtering out the background noise, zeroing in. And this ability lets us get into what's called focused awareness. That's that state of high alertness, wide awake, totally engrossed. You know the feeling, I bet, like when you're really digging into a tough problem for work. Or maybe you're just completely dialed into a video game and the rest of the world fades away. That's focused awareness really firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, and what's fascinating there is while that focus is incredibly powerful, it's actually quite hard to keep up for, long periods. So that kind of begs the question, what happens when our minds just can't stay fixed? Well, that's usually when we experience mind wandering. It's a classic type of drifting consciousness. Your mind just drifts away from what you're supposed to be doing. Often that leads right into daydreaming. Your mind just meanders off, exploring thoughts or fantasies or other things pulling at your attention internally. It's natural, but it definitely hits productivity.
Absolutely. And speaking of how our minds work, here's something really interesting, especially if you've ever tried to juggle like a million things at once. We're talking about divided consciousness. This is where your attention is basically split between two or more things simultaneously. Often, one of those things is pretty mechanical, right? Like folding laundry or maybe driving a route you know really well. Part of your mind seems to go on automatic pilot, freeing up the rest to think about, your grocery list or something. But this divided attention, it can also lead to something called inattentional blindness. It's that really frustrating thing where you fail to notice something completely obvious because your attention is focused somewhere else. Like that time I spent 5 minutes frantically looking for my glasses only to find them perched right on top of my head. Does that sound familiar?
Oh, it definitely does. We've all been there. And if we sort of zoom out to the bigger picture, thinking about how easily our attention can get split like that, it really makes you wonder about the quality of our presence in just, everyday life. Are we truly engaged? Or are we constantly running on multiple tracks, maybe missing important stuff, even important moments right in front of us because that internal spotlight is pointing somewhere else entirely?
So moving from these waking states, let's transition into one of the most mysterious parts of our lives.
Yeah.
Sleep. A lot of our body processes things like our sleep-wake cycle, hormone release, even blood pressure. They fluctuate on this roughly 24-hour cycle. It's called the circadian rhythm. Deep inside your brain, there's this tiny master clock, often called the SCN, the suprachiasmatic nucleus. It's basically your body's internal timekeeper running that sleep-wake show. And that's why, when you fly across time zones, you get that awful feeling of jet lag. It's not just being tired. It's your body's finely tuned internal clock clashing with the local time. It causes fatigue, irritability, trouble concentrating, until your internal rhythm finally resets.
That internal clock is incredibly precise, isn't it? But how do we actually track what's happening in our brains during these cycles? As we go from being awake into sleep, well, researchers use tools like the electroencephalograph, the EEG. It tracks brain waves. When you're awake and alert, your brain is buzzing with these fast, low-amplitude beta waves. But as you relax, maybe close your eyes, it shifts down into slower, more rhythmic alpha waves. Then, once you actually drift off, the EEG shows this really fascinating journey through different stages. Stage 1 sleep has these small, irregular waves. You're easily woken up. Sometimes you don't even realize you'd nodded off. Just a few minutes later, you hit stage 2. That's marked by these unique bursts of brain activity called sleep spindles. It's deeper, but you can still be awakened pretty easily. Then we get into the really deep stuff, stages 3 and 4, sometimes called delta sleep or slow wave sleep. These stages are defined by large, slow delta waves. The main difference between stage 3 and the even deeper stage 4 is just the proportion of those delta waves.
Okay, so all these different stages are cycling through our brains. What does this intricate side brain waves actually mean for our dreams?
Well, after you hit the deepest part of stage 4 sleep, your brain actually reverses course. It cycles back up briefly through stage 3 and 2. And then you enter REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. This is where most of our really vivid dreams happen. During REM, your brain becomes incredibly active. The patterns look surprisingly similar to when you're awake and alert. That's why it's sometimes called active sleep. But here's the paradox. While your brain is firing like crazy, your body's major muscles are basically blocked. You're temporarily paralyzed, and, thankfully so, it's your body's safety mechanism preventing you from, physically acting out your dreams and maybe hurting yourself.
It's still kind of a big mystery, isn't it? Exactly why we sleep. Scientists are still piecing it all together, but we know it's absolutely fundamental for survival. Some theories suggest sleep plays a protective role. Keeps us safe during the vulnerable night hours, conserves energy. Others focus on a restorative function, helping our brains recover, repair the wear and tear from being awake all day. What seems pretty clear, though, is that both REM sleep and those deep non-REM stages are crucial for things like memory consolidation, basically cementing what you've learned into long-term storage.
And then there are the dreams themselves. There are several really interesting theories about why we dream. Some researchers think dreaming might be our brain's way of sorting through problems, maybe even simulating solutions. Then you have the activation synthesis hypothesis. This idea suggests dreams are basically your cerebral cortex trying its best to make sense of kind of random neural signals firing during REM sleep, like creating a story out of chaos. And of course, there's Freud's classic idea that dreams are a form of wish fulfillment, a sort of symbolic window into our unconscious desires. If we really think about the implications here, understanding sleep isn't just about feeling rested. It's fundamental to our cognitive processes. The real kind of aha moment is realizing sleep isn't just downtime. It's an active, essential processing period for the brain. And this becomes super clear when we look at sleep deprivation. When you skimp on sleep, you're not just tired. You're actively undermining your brain's ability to learn, to remember, even to solve problems effectively. It's like trying to run complex software on a computer that never gets restarted. Think about driver drowsiness. It's a huge factor in fatal car accidents, especially in the early morning when sleep debt really hits hard. And it's not just the total amount of sleep either. Missing out on specific types of sleep, particularly REM sleep, seems to significantly impair learning and memory consolidation.
And sometimes our internal sleep systems just go rogue. That's when we see various sleep-wake disorders. Take insomnia disorder, for example. That persistent struggle to fall asleep or stay asleep or get back to sleep if you wake up during the night. If it's chronic, it can stem from all sorts of things: substance abuse, physical illness, psychological issues, even genetics. Then there's narcolepsy. That's where someone has these sudden, uncontrollable sleep attacks during the day. Sometimes they even have vivid hallucinations right before falling asleep. Sleep apnea is another serious one. Breathing actually stops momentarily, maybe hundreds of times a night, leading to really fragmented, poor-quality sleep. We all have occasional nightmares, right? But nightmare disorder involves frequent, recurring, story-like dreams that are really threatening or upsetting. Sleep terror disorder is different, less common, but involves much more intense night terrors. Not quite the same as a typical nightmare. And finally, sleepwalking disorder. That's when a person gets up and wanders around during deep, usually dreamless sleep. So they're not actually acting out a dream. Okay, so beyond our natural cycles of wakefulness and sleep, humans have, for ages, been fascinated with intentionally altering consciousness. Let's get into two powerful methods: meditation and hypnosis. Meditation, broadly speaking, is a practice involving focused attention to induce a relaxed, contemplative state. There are a couple of common approaches. Transcendental meditation, or TM, involves repeating a specific sound or word, a mantra, to help focus the mind and quiet internal chatter. Mindfulness meditation, on the other hand, encourages focusing awareness on the present moment, just noticing sensations, feelings, thoughts as they arise, without judgment.
What's really fascinating here is how these practices, simply by deliberately directing your attention, can actually shift your entire state of awareness. It's quite profound. And this idea of intentionally redirecting consciousness leads us to another powerful technique: hypnosis. Hypnosis is generally understood as an altered state of consciousness. It's characterized by intense, focused attention, deep relaxation, and crucially, a heightened susceptibility to suggestion. Once someone is in this state, a hypnotist can offer suggestions that might lead to some pretty unusual experiences. Things like hypnotic age regression, where people might act and feel as if they are much younger. Or hypnotic analgesia, a significant reduction in pain perception. Other possibilities include reality distortions, like perceiving something that isn't actually there, or maybe not perceiving something that is. There's also something called post-hypnotic amnesia, where the person can't recall what happened during the hypnotic state. And post-hypnotic suggestion, where an idea idea or cue given during hypnosis influences their behavior after they've come out of the state.
So how does hypnosis actually work? It's still debated, really. There are a couple of main theories. One is the role-playing model. This suggests that the person being hypnotized is essentially adopting the role of a good hypnotic subject, actively following the hypnotist's cues and suggestions. Then there's Ernest Hilgard's neo-dissociation theory. This proposes that hypnosis is a genuine state of dissociated or divided consciousness, like different parts of the mind are operating somewhat independently. It's complex stuff. All right, now let's shift gears and explore maybe the most common way consciousness gets altered. Through chemical means, through drugs. Psychoactive drugs are substances that directly affect the brain, influencing our emotional state, our thoughts, perceptions, and behavior. This includes everything from legal substances like alcohol and nicotine to illicit drugs like heroin or cocaine. And then there's marijuana, which occupies a shifting legal space. Drug use becomes drug misuse when that repeated use starts causing problems, personal, occupational, health-related problems. And people who misuse more than one drug are often called polyabusers. Now, prolonged misuse can lead down the road to drug dependence. That's a serious condition where someone loses control over their drug use.
Right. And this raises an important question. Is dependence always just chemical? While physiological dependence is definitely a huge part of it, that's where your body chemistry changes from repeated use, leading to withdrawal symptoms if you stop. And that often involves tolerance, needing more of the drug to get the same effect. The picture is a bit broader. Drug addiction typically refers to that state of drug dependence coupled with physiological dependence where the person feels powerless. But people can also develop a psychological dependence. That's a compulsive or habitual use driven by a psychological need, maybe to cope or feel good, even without strong physical withdrawal. And if we broaden our view even more, we can see this pattern isn't just about substances. Think about compulsive behaviors like gambling or excessive shopping. These can be seen as non-chemical forms of dependence, hijacking similar brain pathways. Even compulsive internet or social media use, sometimes called internet addiction, is a growing concern for mental health professionals, though it's not a formal diagnosis just yet. It really highlights how the brain's reward system can be hooked by things other than drugs.
Okay, let's break down the major categories of these psychoactive drugs, starting with depressants. As the name suggests, these substances reduce central nervous system activity. They slow down heart rate, breathing, that sort of thing. The big ones here are alcohol, barbiturates, and tranquilizers, and opioids. Alcohol is probably the most familiar intoxicant. The more you consume, the more it clouds judgment, impairs coordination and concentration. Alcoholism is that state of chemical dependence, marked by impaired control and physiological need. A related concern, especially among younger adults, is binge drinking. That's typically defined as having 5 or more drinks for men or 4 or more for women on a single occasion. It carries significant health risks and is often linked to poorer academic outcomes. Barbiturates and tranquilizers also calm the nervous system. They're highly addictive, though, and very dangerous in high doses, especially if mixed with alcohol or other depressants. Benzodiazepines, often prescribed for anxiety or insomnia like Valium or Xanax, can also lead to addiction if not used carefully. And finally, opioids, also known as narcotics, think morphine, heroin, fentanyl. These are highly addictive drugs known for powerful pain relief and inducing sleep or euphoria. Okay, moving on from depressants, we have stimulants. These drugs do the opposite. They activate the central nervous system. Amphetamines, for instance, are synthetic stimulants. They kick the sympathetic nervous system into high gear, increased heart rate, blood pressure, breathing. In lower doses, people might use them to boost alertness, concentration, or fight fatigue. Higher doses can produce an intense euphoric rush. You hear about different types like speed, meth, dextrodrine. And here's a fun fact, speaking of stimulants. Ever wonder about Coca-Cola's name? When it first came out way back in 1886, it actually contained a small amount of cocaine. It was marketed as the ideal brain tonic. Don't worry, today it uses a non-psychoactive extract from the coca plant for flavor. Cocaine itself, though, is a powerful natural stimulant derived from those coca leaves. People use it in different ways, sniffing it, smoking it as crack, injecting it. It produces intense pleasure by directly stimulating the brain's reward pathways. Basically, it blocks the reuptake of dopamine, a key pleasure chemical, keeping it active in the synapse for longer, creating that high.
Then there's MDMA, often called ecstasy or Molly. It's chemically similar to amphetamines and produces both mild euphoria and some hallucinogenic effects. But MDMA use can have serious downsides. Depression, anxiety, insomnia, paranoia, even psychotic symptoms in some cases. Heavy use is pretty strongly linked to cognitive problems affecting memory, learning, and attention span down the line. Nicotine, found in tobacco, is another stimulant. It's considered mild in some ways, but it's incredibly addictive. Both physiological and psychological dependence develop very quickly, increases heart rate, suppresses appetite, boosts alertness. But it also has this paradoxical effect: many users report feeling relaxed or mentally calm after using it, which adds to its addictive potential. And of course, the most widely used psychoactive drug on the planet, caffeine, found in coffee, tea, cola, chocolate. It's a mild stimulant. Regular use does lead to physiological dependence, hence the headache if you miss your morning coffee. But generally, in moderation, it's not linked to major health risks, though caution is advised during pregnancy.
Okay, our last major category, hallucinogens. These are drugs known for altering sensory perceptions, producing hallucinations, seeing, hearing, or feeling things that aren't there, or significant distortions of reality. Their effects can be really unpredictable. They might induce relaxation for some, but trigger intense paranoia or panic in others. Interestingly, hallucinogens aren't generally known to cause physiological dependence or withdrawal symptoms like opioids or alcohol do. However, people can develop a psychological dependence, maybe relying on them to cope with stress or difficult emotions. LSD, or acid, is probably the most famous. It can cause vivid hallucinations and profound sensory changes. An LSD trip can last up to 12 hours. It also has physical effects: dilated pupils, increased heart rate and blood pressure, sweating, tremors, loss of appetite, sleeplessness. The big risk with LSD is the potential for bad trips, experiences filled with intense anxiety, panic, or even temporary psychotic reactions like delusions. Other hallucinogens include mescaline from the peyote cactus and psilocybin from certain types of mushrooms. Both have long histories of use in religious or spiritual contexts. Then there's PCP, or angel dust. It's a synthetic drug that can cause delirium, a state of severe mental confusion, disorientation, agitation, and difficulty focusing attention. And finally, marijuana. Derived from the cannabis plant, its main psychoactive component is THC. It alters perceptions and can cause hallucinations, especially at higher doses or in people who are susceptible. Lower doses usually bring relaxation and mild euphoria. Higher doses, however, can lead to negative effects like nausea, vomiting, disorientation, panic, or paranoia.
So when we think about understanding and treating drug misuse, it's really about recognizing this complex web of factors involved. Sociocultural factors definitely play a role. Things like age, employment, cultural norms, religious background, even ethnic differences can influence patterns of use. Biologically, genetics can create predispositions, and the way neurotransmitters work in an individual's brain matters too. And psychologically, people often turn to substances for self-medication, trying to numb anxiety or emotional pain, cope with trauma, or just escape from problems. Treatment, therefore, usually needs to be multifaceted. Detoxification, getting the drug out of the person's system safely, is often the first critical step. Then, psychological counseling is key. It helps people understand the roots of their misuse and develop coping strategies to stay drug-free. Self-help groups, like AA or NA, provide invaluable peer support and a framework for maintaining abstinence. And often, therapeutic medications might be used alongside counseling to help manage withdrawal, reduce cravings, or treat underlying mental health issues. It's usually a combination approach that works best.
So after covering all this ground, what does this really mean for you? Well, from that intense focus you bring to a challenge, to the hidden world of your dreams at night, even to the conscious choices you make about substances. Our deep dive today really shows just how incredibly dynamic and intricate our internal world, our consciousness truly is. It's this constant, complex interplay of our biology, our psychology, and the environment around us, shaping every single moment of our awareness.
Exactly. This isn't just abstract theory. It really suggests that consciousness isn't just something static that we have. It's something we actively navigate, something we experience, and yes, something we can sometimes profoundly shape, for better or worse. It's like the operating system for our entire lives. So here's a final thought to maybe chew on as you go about your day. Think about all these different states we've discussed: focused awareness, mind wandering, dreaming, maybe even altered states. In which of these fascinating states of consciousness do you find yourself spending most of your time? And what might that tell you about your own unique everyday experience?